My 8-year-old put a teenager in the hospital, and the judge asked for her advice. I was reviewing quarterly reports when my phone started buzzing incessantly. 3 missed calls from Riverside Elementary in 2 minutes, followed by a text from Principal Hartwell that made my blood freeze. Come immediately. Police involved. Urgent situation with Zoe. I grabbed my keys and ran to the parking lot, my mind spinning through every possible scenario. Zoe was 8 years old, quiet, the kind of kid who spent recess reading instead of playing. She'd never been in trouble for anything more serious than talking during library time. The drive to school took 15 minutes that felt like hours. When I pulled into the parking lot, I saw 3 police cars and an ambulance, its lights flashing but sirens off. My stomach dropped as I walked through the front entrance, trying to control my breathing and failing completely. The receptionist's expression told me everything before she spoke. That practiced look of professional concern mixed with something that might have been fear or disbelief. She directed me to the principal's office without making eye contact, and I could hear multiple voices arguing down the hallway before I even reached the door. Principal Hartwell stood when I entered, her face pale as she gestured to a chair. I remained standing because sitting felt like accepting whatever nightmare was about to unfold. Across from her desk sat a woman I recognized from school events, Mrs. Blackwood, whose son Connor was in high school. She was clutching a tissue and glaring at me with pure hatred. Mrs. Blackwood spoke first, her voice shaking with barely contained rage. She informed me that my daughter had viciously attacked her 16-year-old son during lunch recess, causing injuries severe enough to require surgery and potentially permanent nerve damage. She added that Connor was an honor student and star athlete who'd never done anything to provoke such violence from a child. The words hung in the air like accusations, and I felt my knees weaken before I forced myself to stay focused. Where is Zoe? I asked, my voice coming out steadier than I felt. Principal Hartwell explained that she was in the counselor's office being evaluated, and that's when Officer Valdez stepped forward from where he'd been standing by the window. He was middle-aged with kind eyes, but his expression was grim as he explained that based on the severity of the injuries and witness statements, he would need to take Zoe to the station for processing. The word hit me like a physical blow. Fingerprints and photographs and my 8-year-old daughter being treated like a criminal. Mrs. Blackwood started talking again, describing how Connor had been eating lunch peacefully when Zoe had apparently attacked him without warning, striking him with something hard enough to fracture his skull and cause a concussion. She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo of Connor in a hospital bed, his head wrapped in bandages, his face swollen beyond recognition. But something didn't make sense. Zoe weighed maybe 55 pounds and had never shown any signs of aggression. I asked if I could see my daughter first, before we discussed anything else. Principal Hartwell nodded, leading me down the hallway while Officer Valdez followed at a respectful distance. Mrs. Blackwood stayed behind, but I could feel her hatred boring into my back. The counselor's office smelled like vanilla and old books. Zoe sat in an oversized chair with her legs drawn up to her chest, looking impossibly small. Her right knuckles were scraped raw, dried blood visible in the creases of her small fingers. When she looked up at me, I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Not fear or guilt, but a kind of cold determination that made her look older than her 8 years. The school counselor, Ms. Rivera, pulled me aside and whispered that Zoe had refused to explain what happened, just kept asking if Sammy was okay. I had no idea who Sammy was, or why Zoe would be more concerned about some other child than the fact that she was about to be arrested. I sat down next to my daughter and took her uninjured hand, asking her as calmly as I could manage to tell me what happened. She looked at me with those suddenly ancient eyes and said 5 words that changed everything. Connor was hurting little Sammy, Dad. My breath caught in my throat. Sammy Fletcher was a 5-year-old with autism who attended the school's special needs program. He was nonverbal and had severe sensory processing issues that made him vulnerable to overstimulation and meltdowns. Zoe explained in her small voice that she'd been reading under the big oak tree when she heard crying coming from behind the maintenance shed. When she went to investigate, she found Connor and 2 of his friends surrounding Sammy, who was on the ground rocking back and forth and making the distressed sounds he made when overwhelmed. Connor was filming with his phone while his friends threw pebbles at Sammy and laughed. I felt rage flash through me so intense I had to grip the chair arms to stay grounded. Zoe described how she'd told them to stop, but Connor had just laughed and said something about getting content for his social media. He'd then deliberately poured his chocolate milk over Sammy's head while still filming, causing the little boy to have a complete meltdown. Sammy had started hitting himself in the head, which only made the teenagers laugh harder. That's when Zoe had apparently picked up a rock from the ground and thrown it as hard as she could at Connor's head. Full story on my channel and linked below.